Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the RTM. Today is Monday, January 22nd. I'm Krista McNamara, the Darien Town Clerk. Welcome. With 60 RTM members present out of a possible 100, we have a quorum, and I will call this meeting to order. I have two quick announcements. The first is to please welcome the newest member of the RTM from District 1, John Sartorius. John, if you stand up. Welcome to John. Also, in District 3, as an announcement, there are still openings. So if anyone is watching this who lives in District 3 or know of anyone who lives in District 3 interested in joining the RTM, please have them get in touch with me or District Chair. And with that, I will turn it over to your moderator, Seth Morton. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. We just have a few, I'm sure we'll be out of here by 8:30, just a couple items on the agenda. Oh, doubters, okay. Well, first item here, so we get the ball rolling, is acceptance of the agenda. Without objection, I'll accept the agenda. See no objections. Next item is approval of the minutes for November 11. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please? Thank you, Jim. And a second, please. There we go. Thank you very much. Corrections, additions, anything? Okay. Guess we're ready to vote then. All in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Next item is item 24-1 to authorize an appropriation and bonding authorization in the amount of $2.1 million for the Hanson Road Bridge. Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
Good evening. I'm Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move 24-1, authorizing the appropriation and bonding authorization in the amount of $2,067,250 for the Hanson Road Bridge replacement. Do I hear a second? Second. Rolf. If there are no objections, I will waive the reading of this resolution. Before I give the details of this resolution, the F&B Committee thought it might be appropriate to discuss the financial aspects and processes of appropriation and bonding, as the RTM has 6 items totaling $27 million in new debt authorizations, all of which have either state grants, contingencies, or other amounts that will affect the final amount to be spent and the final debt issued. So here's a quick tutorial or refresher. The areas to be covered are: where are we and where will the town be at the end of these 6 resolutions? Total authorization versus final issuance. When are bonds notes issued and who determines term and composition? How will the town fund if bonds are not immediately issued? What is the anticipated annual debt expense for each bonding? And what happens to the authorized but unissued residual amounts when projects are completed? And I happen to notice that John's here, so if I say anything wrong, I know I'll be corrected. As of June 30th, 2023, the town had $117,885,000 in outstanding debt, with scheduled principal reductions of $5,985,000. As discussed in the January 16th Board of Finance meeting, the town anticipates new debt, both bonds and notes, to be discussed in the March-April timeframe. In addition, the town has an additional $157,113,670 of authorized but unissued debt for active projects, with the primary contributors being Great Island with $60+ million and the HHR school renovation projects with $82 million. When the RTM approves the 6 resolutions tonight, the total authorized but unissued debt will approximate $184 million. You will hopefully see that adding the outstanding and authorized unissued does not mean the town will have potentially over $300 million in debt, as the amounts authorized do not equal the final debt issued during issued. This is due to the receipts of grants, other monies actually spent versus authorized, and the rescinding of authorized but unissued debt upon completion of a project. Now that I scared you, let me say that based upon the Board of Finance statements, these amounts are not expected to affect our AAA rating. For each of these projects, the cost is the total appropriation, and that must cover 100% of the anticipated expenditures. All the projects have contingencies for unforeseen expenses. However, if the project costs less, will cost less because the state grants receives, and the amount of the final debt issued will be less than the total authorized. The bonding amount must cover 100% of that appropriation. However, in each of these resolutions, the town does not anticipate issuing the debt equal to the total appropriation. We'll cover that for each resolution discussed. The town will also not be issuing the debt we approve tomorrow for each of the amounts that we approve tonight. Some projects will initially be funded by the town general fund, and then the general fund will be paid once debt is issued. Others, like HHR projects, will be funded over a period of time to meet the anticipated expenditures for the next few months and years. In some cases, such as Great Island, one-year notes, typically referred to as BANs, bond anticipation notes, will and have been issued. These notes can be rolled over, and the interest is due at the end of the note versus every 6 months. The composition of notes and bonds, term length of the bonds, whether or not it's 20 or 30 years, and the terms and conditions, and the amounts to be included in a town issuance are decided by the Board of Finance with the assistance of the town bond advisor. At the end of each report, an estimated cost of the appropriation will be provided based upon a 20-year bond and anticipated interest rates. Actual amounts may change, let me correct that, will change upon market rates at the time of issuance, term of the bond, or other bonding terms, such as interest only for the first year or two. The final point is an important one. Once a project is completed, meaning all the expenses have been paid, and any state grants are received by the town, we have them in hand, any authorized but unissued debt should be rescinded by the Board of Finance. That means that the residual amount is removed from the authorized total. F&B has been and will continue to monitor this closely. So now that I've bored you and extended an already long meeting, let's get down to business. The cost estimates associated with the Hanson Ridge Bridge repair as follows. Design costs are $178,000. Right-of-way is $20,000. Estimated construction costs are $1,475,000. Construction, engineering, and inspection is $221,000. And by the way, I'm rounding up or down. And contingency of 10% approximates $148,000, bringing the primary estimated cost to $2,042,250. An additional $15,000 of bond issuance costs has been added to the primary cost estimates. The breakdown was submitted to the Department of Transportation as part of the state local bridge program and was approved. It is required that a supplemental application cost estimate be submitted within 18 months of the award date, which was July 2023. The state local bridge program will reimburse the town 50% of the final cost. If using for round numbers the example, should the final cost be $2 million, the state will reimburse the town $1 million, the town will issue only $1 million in debt, and the Board of Finance would rescind the remaining $42,250. The town would still be required to pay the full $2 million prior to the state receipt, hence why we're authorizing the full amount of the project. This is just an example to show the prior discussion. This project, due to its small size, will initially be funded by the general fund and repaid upon the issuance of debt and receipt of state grants. Upon approval, the authorized but unissued debt of this thing will move the authorized and unissued to $159,080,920. Assuming the full receipt of the award grant, the annual estimated desk costs will be $70,675. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee unanimously approved this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Speaking on behalf of the Public Works Committee, Mark Adeletta, Chair.
Thank you, Seth. Good evening, Mark Adeletta, District 5 and Chair of Public Works Subcommittee to the RTM. As Jack noted, on January 11, with 13 of 15 members, the Public Works Committee met jointly with Finance and Budget and Public Health and Safety to discuss this resolution. At that meeting, our Director of Public Works, Ed Gentile, provided a high-level overview of the project itself. For those that don't remember, please recall that back in July of 2022, Public Works found there to be defects in the bridge over there on Hanson Road. Overall, a washout in the northwest corner was discovered, cracking and sinkholes on the roadway. An engineer and a contractor were brought in at the time, and with approval of the EPC, there was some hardening of the abutment to protect the area and the roadway with a steel plate that was put down. The condition has been monitored, I believe almost weekly, by Public Works the past year and a half. Public Works is looking to put this to bid for the project in March or April type time frame. There are a couple easements to be finalized from what we understand, or perhaps have been in the interim, and a final completed application to EPC to be processed. The plan is for the work to begin in May, with the goal for it to be completed ahead of the start of the upcoming school year. There will be a period of time where this road will be closed. A detour plan has been put forth to the Public Works Commission. I expect Public Health and Safety will elaborate on that a bit. There will also be some large pieces of equipment on site while the work is being done. There will be periods where the material will be moved in and moved out. It is explained that 10-foot wide culvert section will be placed in there to avoid future washouts. I guess we were told that that's a slightly different design than what we may think of as a bridge design. A culvert's going to be placed in there. And the front will be faced with stones, natural stones, so as to make it look more natural. A question was asked and it was addressed that the opening where the water flows in is in fact been widened from approximately 15 feet to 17 feet to allow for greater freeboard under the bridge. It was explained that that's the gap between the high water mark and the bridge itself. It was asked and noted that the downstream, there's no anticipated increase in downstream flow due to that widening. And it was also noted that this is due to specific hydraulic design elements incorporated into the structure of the bridge itself. One other item that was noted was that the guardrail will also be somewhat natural looking in that Public Works pursued approval from the DOT to use wooden guardrails similar to what you see on the Merritt Parkway as opposed to steel guardrails. Throughout the process, neighbor feedback and concerns were listened to and taken into account, including a public information session that was held. The neighbors' cooperation was obviously appreciated. Jack mentioned the Public Works pursued a local bridge program grant to cover 50% of the cost. I'm going to skip the breakdown of the design costs since Jack already covered that and save a little bit of time. A supplemental application will be submitted when the final amounts are known, just before it's put out to bid. The Public Works Department, the Public Works Subcommittee would like to thank Mr. Gentile and Mr. Ostafine for their work and time they've contributed on the project and also in informing the committee. Once again, the Public Works Committee voted unanimously to support this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Speaking on behalf of Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick.
Thanks, sir.
Chair.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mac Patrick. I chair Public Health and Safety. We met on Thursday, January 11th, with 8 of 13 members present in the special joint meeting with Finance and Budget and Public Works, and we heard the same presentation by Ed Gentile, head of Public Works Department. We noted that the bridge was built in 1936 and last inspected in 2016. Cracking was noted in mid-2022. Temporary repairs were made in September of 2022 with plans for the future replacement. Mr. Gentile noted that Hanson Road will be closed with no through traffic while construction takes place. We did hear rumors that there are residents on Hanson Road that would like that to be permanent, but we're not we can't substantiate that. But there will be traffic guards will be used as needed, and the work should begin in mid-2024. Public Health and Safety voted unanimously to approve the bonding with one abstention, and that's me. I work for Morgan Stanley, and I have to abstain from bonding situations. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Any other committees wish to speak? Town officials? Members of the body? Questions? Electors of the town? Appears we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. No votes, please. And abstentions.
Oh, sorry.
Next item on the agenda is 24-2. Amend a bonding authorization for sanitary sewer system. Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move 24-2, amend the appropriation and bonding authorization to increase the amount by $2,357,000 $1,300 to $4,697,300 for the sanitary sewer system project. Do I have a second? Second. I got Jim. If there's no objection, I will waive the reading of the resolution. This is the next phase of the sewer project. The RTM originally approved appropriation bonding of $2,357,300, consisting of a total estimated cost of $2,917,796, with a bond issuance partially offset by $580,000 of ARPA costs and $330,000 received on the Clean Water Grant that was applied for and received. If you look at that, that says that based upon the fact that ARPA had originally assigned $580, and you go through the numbers, it says that there's $211,000 on the first issuance of ARPA that may be available. That is up to the ARPA committee to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, or it may be allocated to another project as needed. This phase has the following estimated project cost. Phase 2 engineering is $720,000. The CY24 CCTV is $50,000. Phase 3 rehab, which is Arcadis design, is $250,000. Construction costs rehab is $1,250,000. Darien police time is $20,000, and contingency and escalator is $60,000. With the total costs of Phase 2 CCTV and Phase 3 rehab totaling $2,350,000, an additional $17,300 has been added for bond issuance costs. This is a sewer project. While the town will issue the debt, repayment of this debt will come from the sewer authority, not town real estate taxes. Such debt is included in the sewer assessment for those sewer customers connected to the sewer system. This project will not add to the town mill rate, nor again, I'm going to stress, be paid by town taxpayers. When we do the budget, on the last item, we start dealing with the sewer authority and other reserve accounts. This is where this all flows into. The town again will apply for the Clean Water Fund grant of approximately $55,000 of the design portion of the project. The grant award would approximate $385,000, reducing the debt to be issued by an equal amount. This project will be funded initially from the general fund, and that fund will be paid through debt issuance, grants received, and any costs not spent. Any remaining authorization should be rescinded by the Board of Finance upon completion of the project. Assuming receipt of the full grant, debt service is estimated to be $135,000 annually. Again, as I cannot stress enough, the principal and interest payments for this project will be paid by sewer customers, not through property taxes or other town revenues. I'll also mention that success of this project will lower our costs for those similar to myself who's hooked up to the sewer, as it will reduce some of the payments that we're currently making. Upon approval of this resolution, the authorized but unissued debt will be $163,778,220. The resolution was discussed with the RTM Public Works and Public Health and Safety Committee in a joint session with Ed Gentile, the Public Works Department Chairperson. We'd like to thank the other committees and Ed to make this meeting happen. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee unanimously approved this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the Public Works Committee, Mark Adeletta, Chair. The results of voting on 24-1, it passes, 72 in favor, 3 abstentions. I abstain on all votes except to break a tie.
Good evening. On January 11th, with 13 of 15 members present, as noted previously, the Public Works Committee met jointly with F&B and Public Health and Safety to discuss and review and take action on this resolution. At that meeting, our Director of Public Works provided a detailed update on the project and the various stages overall. Mr. Gentile gave an overview of the ongoing project to rehab the town sewer system and how the dollars are being spent, basically. In 2019, a consultant was hired to evaluate I&I. This stands for infiltration and inflow of the system. This is rainwater, groundwater, etc., that is getting into the sanitary sewer system, then it is being sent to Stanford for processing, and the town ends up having to pay to have that water treated. Early estimates were that as much as 50% of what was being sent to be processed could be, and I emphasize could be, I&I. This is significant given the town pays, we were told, approximately $3 million per year to treat the sewage that's sent to Stanford. This was viewed as a significant opportunity to reduce ongoing costs. At the time, the initial bonding was just over $2 million and was covered the initial evaluation engineering, as Mr. Davis touched on. Once that was complete, areas were identified that required pipelining or pipe replacements. Phase 1 included the initial portions of Old Kings Highway South, which is able to be done, as Mr. Davis noted, with ARPA funds. The study itself, well, I won't get into the actual breakdown. Mr. Davis covered that. He covered the breakdown of the costs and the grant. Subsequent Phase 2 included additional pipelining, has just recently commenced. Phase 2 includes, we were told, Dickinson, Fitch, Clock Lane, Hecker, Mansfield areas. 13,000 feet of pipe will be lined, and 70 manhole covers will be swapped out with a watertight version. So the initial bonding will have been pretty much used up by that. Phase 3, the final phase, is in the initial engineering report, is that the bonding will be what this bonding will be used for. This phase covers more of the west side of town. This includes Hoyt Street, Seagate areas, for example. In the discussion, it was noted that the economic useful life of these linings used to help prevent the I&I is understood to be approximately 20 years. The bonding also includes some public works camera work, as Mr. Davis noted, and the cleaning of a portion of the system. Public Works has a practice currently of cleaning approximately 10% of the system each year. The system has 81 miles of pipe, so that's about 8.1 miles that's cleaned each year. This camera work that was noted helps to find defects in these lines before they collapse. This approach is viewed as having, it's better to be proactive than reactive after a collapse occurs. To date, we were told that the Public Works Department has been able to overlap some of the design work with some of the FISL work. So the actual project is a bit ahead of schedule. The current estimate is that approximately 1/3 of that I&I I mentioned earlier on will be eliminated by this project when it's complete. As a result, it was noted that the investment payback period is somewhere between 5 and 6 years. That's just an estimate for right now. And as Jack noted, the savings will be ongoing for many years, given the useful life of this upgrade. Again, I thank Mr. Gentile for aiding the town in, one, pursuing an opportunity that materially reduces the ongoing costs into the future, and two, for the time he, of course, spent with the committees preparing for this meeting. Again, the Public Works Committee voted unanimously to approve this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. didn't get you assigned to this, Mac, but be my guest. I sense Mr. Patrick would like to report on this.
We were at the meeting.
He got dragged into the meeting even though he wasn't assigned by the Rules Committee, so please.
Now you tell me. Well, Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety, we did attend that meeting, and really I don't really have a whole lot more to add. Mark took most of the thunder. We did note that the bonding will also include the closed caption TV and cleaning of 8 miles of the town system. Public Health and Safety voted unanimously to approve the bonding with 2 abstentions. Thank you.
Any other committees? Seeing none, town officials, members of the body, electors of the town, I see none. Seems that we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. No votes, please. Abstentions? See none? Okay.
Speak louder and use the microphone because people, even though we're sitting in the middle, can't hear.
Is the mic working?
I don't know, but I know people have complained that they can't. I'm going to test.
Is the mic working, folks? Okay. Just ask everybody to speak up when they're up there. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is 24-3, vote to designate a location for the conduct of early voting in Darien. Speaking on behalf of the Town Government Structure and Administration Committee, Frank Kemp, Chair.
My name is Frank Kemp, District 4, and Chairman of the RTM Government Structure and Town Government Structure and Administration, TGS&A Committee. I move RTM Resolution 24-3, a vote to designate a location for the conduct of early voting in Darien. Is there a second? If there's no objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. Thank you. On Monday, January 22nd, TGS&A Committee, with all members attending, met to discuss this new feature in Connecticut's regulations for voting. The committee was honored to have Kara Gately, Registrar Voter, and Corey Freight, Deputy Registrar, as guests to provide some excellent background on this topic. As further background, you recall that in the November 2022 election, there was a question on the general election ballot concerning an amendment to the state constitution to allow early voting in elections conducted in Connecticut. This amendment to the Constitution passed in 2022 so that the legislature proceeded with implementation of the project in 2023 session. The state's instructions as to how exactly this would take place was formulated in House Bill number 5004, which became Public Act 23-5 last year. This 44-page act spelled out the details of the operation, which at first resembling the absentee voting procedures, was actually a whole new protocol that defined just how citizens would vote early and in person. For example, the early voting window is 4 days for the presidential preference primary, which is coming up on April 2nd, 7 days for most other primaries, and 14 days for the general elections, which will be November 5th of this year. For all elections, the early voting locations must be open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., with exceptions on Tuesday and Thursday, the week before the election, when the hours are 8 to 8. The early voting site must be supervised by the registrar of voters, appointed moderators, and support personnel to ensure the custody of the pre-printed ballots and the marked ballots, and they're enclosed in their security envelopes. As you might guess, this whole process is just different than absentee voting. Public Act 23-5 also allowed municipalities with population over 20,000 to designate additional early voting sites. With Darien's population just over this threshold, the registrars of voters has recommended that Town Hall, and only Town Hall, be the site of early voting. As such, we have this resolution before us this evening to confirm this procedure back to the Secretary of State. Further details on this process were prepared by the Registrar of Voters in their executive summary of January 4th, which was included in our package, and the implementing resolution prepared by Town Council, which reflects a sound approach and a good start on this confirmation of early voting to operate here in Town Hall. After reviewing this background material, the TGS&A Committee unanimously approved Resolution 24-3 and recommended its approval by the RTM this evening. Respectfully submitted, Frank Kemp, Chair.
Thank you, Frank. Any other committee wish to speak? Okay. Town officials? Don't see any. Okay. Members of the body? Electors of the town? Yes. Yes. Yeah. You'll never be heard, Bill. Hopefully that mic is working too.
Sorry about that. Bill Clarkson, District 1. I was just asking if there's any changes to the requirements for identification for early voting as opposed to
No, the
showing
same
up on
rules apply, I think. Frank? The question is, are there any changes to the IDing yourself? Can't hear. You can't hear this? Oh, you couldn't hear Bill's.
Sure. My question is there any changes? Is there any differences in the identification or credentials that people have to present when they show up for early voting as opposed to regular day of election?
No? Yeah. Registrar of Voters?
That is a very good question. Hi, Kara Gately, Republican Registrar of Voters. While the legislation that regarding early voting does not change or amend any of the voter identification requirements, which vary depending on the type of election, whether it be a local, state, or federal election. There are different statutes that get involved with the voting requirements, identification requirements. However, what the act did change is instead of allowing for election day registration, it now allows for same day registration during the early voting period. So on the 4 or 7 or 14 day that that immediately precede the primary or election, actually not primary, just elections, people can register on the same day, and they will have to show the required residency and eligibility regarding citizenship identification if they're going to register to vote that day, and then they can vote early.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Other questions in the body? Sorry, Bill, I missed that on the first pass. Okay, now it looks like we might be ready to vote. Okay, all those in favor, please rise. Results of voting on 24-2, 72 in favor, no noes, 3 abstentions. 24-2 passes. No votes, please. And abstentions. Better or no?
Somewhat better.
From here?
Yeah, from here to.
I'll try that. Okay, next item on the agenda is 24-4, vote on an agreement between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Administrators Association. Speaking on behalf of the Education Committee, Ed Washeka, Chair.
Hi, Ed Washeka, District 3, and Chair of the Education Committee. I move the Resolution 24-4, and with no objection, will waive the reading of the resolution to approve and to not reject the Darien.
Try speaking up. Move adjust to see if adjusting the mic there helps.
Waive the reading of the resolution to approve.
Okay?
To approve and to not reject the Darien Administrator's contract. Do I hear a second? The RTM Education Committee met on Monday, January 8th, with 8 of 13 members present. Dr. Adley, Rich Rudel, Marge Sion from the administration were present, along with Jill McCammon, Sarah Parent, and John Sini from the Board of Education to answer questions. The Board of Ed negotiated a new 3-year contract with the Darien Administrators Association. Over the past 3 years, the district has experienced significant turnover in administrator positions, with almost 50% of that with over 50% turnover in that last 3-year period. While our compensation policies are in some cases lower in the district, it isn't the universal reason for administrators to leave. Consequently, the board focused on improving the contract in a number of areas to improve retention of existing staff and to improve recruitment efforts at the entry level. The contract increases wages from 3 to 3.25% per year, with the contract year commencing July 1st, 2024. Other economic adjustments include an increase in the annual annuity payment from $500 to $1,000, a change in the educational stipend, a 1% increase in the health care premium cost share, and an increase in the work year from 197 to 207 days for elementary school assistant principals, with the possibility of 10 work-from-home days when students are not in the building. Entry-level pay will increase for newly hired administrators. The impact of all of these changes results in total compensation, with a total compensation increase for administrators of 6.2% from fiscal year 24 to 25, and projected increases of 4% and 3.2% in fiscal years 2025 and 2026 respectively. The committee was comfortable with the process by which the Board of Ed Negotiating Committee, including Dave Brown and Sarah Parent from the, sorry, it's because I have Jim Palin and Sarah Parent right there and I put the names together. Including Dave Brown and Sarah Parent and Jim Palin from the Board of Finance, negotiated this contract, recognizing that it supports our hardworking staff in the district and is responsible to the taxpayers. The committee voted unanimously to support and to not reject this contract and hopes that the RTM does the same. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis, Chair.
Much better. I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. Thank you, Ed, for the detailed report. I'll try not to repeat any of those points. Jill McCannon, who is the Board of Ed Chair, Marge Sion, Dr. Adley, and Rich Rudel were on our virtual meeting. The only 2 or 3 things that I'm going to add is that the health insurance employee contribution increases to 22% in 24 and 25, and 23% in 26. Another important point, which is consistent with the teacher's contract, the non-birth parent leave mirroring that of the teachers. And also, there was an increase in the tuition reimbursement fund, increasing from $5,000 to $10,000, and the per credit reimbursement increasing from $150 to $400. Ed went through the numbers of what the increases are on an annual basis, but I do want to point out the numbers that were mentioned were based upon the current staffing of the administration as it is today. For those following the proposed superintendent's budget, the above does not reflect any additions to the administrative FTEs. With that, the RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve and not reject the Darien Administrations Association contract settlement and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other committees who wish to report? Any town officials? Okay. Questions from the body? See none? Elector, yes.
Hi, Liz Bacon, District 2.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. How many administrators are there in the district, and how does this translate on a per person basis? It's up 6%, but I mean, what does that mean in dollar terms? This negotiation, where does that net out?
All right. Jack or Ed or?
Just got the answer to the other one. There are currently 36 administrators in our district. Let me go back to the numbers. Can't read them without these. The total increase based upon the current number of 36 for the fiscal year 25 is $378,080. For fiscal year 26 is $261,816, and for fiscal year 27 is $218,508. Just to give it in its total, we're anticipating, based upon the numbers in the current administrators, that the total compensation for administrators in fiscal year 25 is $6,485,778. For fiscal year 26, $6,747,593. And for fiscal year 27, $6,966,101. As everyone knows, as I mentioned before, The Board of Ed is currently looking at the superintendent's budget, so the number of administrators and what these numbers end up in the fiscal year 25 budget may change based upon the final budget approved by the Board of Ed. Did that answer your question?
So that's an additional $300 plus $1,000?
For, it's an, I'll repeat the question. The question was that an additional amount of $380,000? And the answer is, it's an additional amount to the current year's budget.
Other questions from the body? I don't see any. Electors of the town? Are we ready to vote? All in favor, please rise. Results of voting on 24-3, 74 in favor, 1 no, 1 abstention. Item 24-3 passes. We have now 3 items next on the agenda, and we're going to follow the following procedure on this. We'll have the committee's report, and then and they will report on all of them. We'll move all 3 items, 24-5, 24-6, 24-7. We'll get all the reports forward, presentation from the HHR committee, and then we'll come back and we have to vote on each one separately. So that's the procedure we're going to follow here. Have we got all of the votes? Okay. So to kick off 24-5, 24-6, and 24-7, Jack Davis, Chair of the F&B.
As I'm getting the documents out, I'm sure everyone would much rather have the experts from the HHR Building Committee answer questions than having Ed or myself trying to answer some of them. So it's a good presentation you're going to hear. I'm going to identify myself as Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, only once. As Seth explained, I'll be moving 24-5, 24-6, and 24-7, better known as the HHR project. I'll then provide the report for F&B at a high level to address some of the financial aspects and financing of these projects. The RTM, however, is required to vote separately on each project for state purposes. When the state evaluates this, they look at each school separately. With that, I move Resolution 24-5 to increase an appropriation for the planning, design, and renovation of the Hindley Elementary School from $27,550,000 to $33,479,045, and to authorize the issuance of bonds and notes to finance the appropriation in the amount of $33,479,045. Do I have a second? I have Patty. If there's no objections, I will waive the reading of the resolution, which is good because it's long. I move 24-6, resolution to increase an appropriation for the planning, design, and renovation of the Holmes Elementary School from $25,600,000 to $34,003,800, and to authorize the issuance of bonds and notes to finance the appropriation in the amount of $34,003,800. Do I have a second? I have Clara. If there's no objection, I will waive the reading of the resolution. I move 24-7, resolution to increase the appropriation for the planning, design, and renovation of the Royal Elementary School from $29,100,000 to $34,007,890, and to authorize the issuance of bonds and notes to finance the appropriation in the amount of $34,007,890. Do I have a second? I have Michael. If there's no objection, I waive the reading of the resolution. I'm going to start with a little joke. I really like Chris. I love Jill and David. We've worked well together. I hope this is the last time we see you. A bit of history. Bids went out this summer and were higher than expected. The building committee rebid in the fall with greater participation, and several vendors stayed the same. In addition, the project plans were refined, adding security features, screening for mechanicals on roof and the ground, unsuitable soil, which I'll explain because I love this, which is fill from prior construction that cannot be packed sufficiently for the bases of foundations, as well as some minor contaminated soil, which will be removed in the appropriate way. These are but a few. Some of the additional work that has accounted for this increase. Site work at Hinley, which is stormwater retention, $250,000, Holmes emergency driveway and stormwater, $450,000, and Royal relocation of generators, $33,000. Screening, as was decided by the Planning and Zoning Board, $250,000, $150,000, and $168,000. I'm going Hinley, Holmes, Royal, if anybody's curious. Unsuitable soil, $565,000, $350,000, and $240,000. We're doing some basements, which I rounded the numbers, which is $193,000, $304,000, $559,000. Non-building systems work, which is really ceiling replacements of $120,000, $185,000, and $180,000. New MEP upgrades, which is really duct work, otherwise I would have had no idea what it was, at $250,000 for all three. Homes, we're adding a new main entrance security vestibule and interior work, larger because it has larger new construction, for $670,000, and security features recommended by the security department for $121,000, $90,000, and $120,000. Just these refinements alone is $5.6 million. The building will use a construction manager. Trade and subcontractors will sign a contract with that construction manager, not the town. This is similar to Ox Ridge. There is a capped guaranteed maximum price that the construction manager will sign with the town. So these costs will be fixed. The construction manager does have contingency built in for unforeseen events. The town also has contingency, and that's really for the charges, for changes in the design, similar to any remodeling. You didn't like the wall here, you want to move it 2 feet over, that's going to change the cost. The Oxbridge project used about 60% of their contingency. This project might expect to use about the same or a little bit more. The total contingency for the construction manager is now 2.5 million with some change, which is an increase of 439,000. The owner's contingency, that's us, is 4.8 million plus change, which is an increase of 1.8 million. The project will be eligible for state grants, 20% for renovations and 10% for new construction. That should tell you what the focus of the state is and whether or not they want renovations or new construction. The state has reviewed the prior submission of 82 million, and the estimated cost, which David worked up, is about 19%, which is really good. So what's before us? The RTM needs to answer a few questions. Does this project meet the ed specs provided and approved by the Board of Ed? Does this project provide the same educational experience in all 5 schools? Did the building committee provide a detailed analysis of costs and manage the costs appropriately? Can the town afford these projects? We are not here, and I stress, we're not here to decide if all the schools should have been new or that every classroom needed to be painted. Those are the questions we have to answer. It's an up and down. Effin believes that the answer to all is yes for each of these questions. The building committee has met the education specs. All classrooms will have a standard size of 900. 90% of the electrical and plumbing will be upgraded. It will be able to meet the technology needs of the future. They will all have air conditioning, and the same criteria will be taught throughout the schools, with only the nuance being the style of the teacher. The costs have been reviewed, and the town has a now guaranteed max price. And although expensive, the 101 million plus is affordable to the town. The authorized but unissued debt will be 145,340 upon the approval of each of these resolutions. Based upon the discussions and analysis presented at the last Board of Finance meeting, a combination of notes and bonds will probably be issued during the construction project, and expenses for the grants will be submitted throughout the project, which will ultimately reduce the need to bond for these. At a conservative basis of 15%, which was in the Board of Finance analysis, that brings us down to about $80 million of debt. The exiting appropriation for this is approximately $6 million annually, based upon 20-year notes. The additions that we're just doing, which is a little less than 20 mil, is 1.3 million increase. As some of you might be aware, the Board of Finance approved these projects at 4 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. Part of the reason for the minority votes is the need for the town to perform greater long-term analysis on debt and capital expenditures. With Great Island, flooding, town infrastructure, potential further renovations to Middlesex Middle School and DHS, 5 fire engines, and other projects yet to be identified, the town side cannot be sidelined solely for the future school renovations. In addition, there's a long-term concern that with Ox Ridge and 3 schools, some 20 years down the road, the town will once again be looking at some heavy investments. The F&B committee agrees with this overall concept presented by the Board of Finance member. We agree that some of the things that we may have bonded in the past may now not be bonded. I mean, it's one thing when interest rates were basically nothing, but they're not nothing now. And so we're hopeful to have those conversations with the Board of Finance, and I know the Board of Finance themselves will be having it. So some things that we have bonded in the past may be paid out of the general fund to pay it down. If we can afford it, we shouldn't be paying interest on it. That being said, the committee unanimously approved those 3 projects and the increase in the appropriation and bonding authorization and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Very thorough. Speaking on behalf of the Education Committee, Ed Rosheka, Chair.
Jack was so thorough, I'm going to ignore most of what I've got here, and I'll give you just a very few words. And the HHR committee will be able to go through things in more detail. I think about the only thing that Jack didn't cover was that, are you guys going to talk about the plans for the, oh my God. One of the questions that we had and that the Board of Finance had asked was, what if instead of doing this renovation, we had started fresh with new schools? And so the committee did do some back-of-the-envelope planning to estimate what it might cost if we had built 3 new schools, or in some cases 2 larger new schools, as well as more fulsome renovations. Are you going to go over those numbers? Okay. The numbers were dramatically higher than these. So from the standpoint of what we're being asked to fund, which is another $19 million, is far cheaper than the alternative. The questions that we had were primarily on timing of the renovations, management of the overall project, and student safety concerns. Beyond that, sorry. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else to add because Jack has covered it. The committee appreciated the HHR committee's work on providing the estimates for these other, the new school the potential new school buildings. Ultimately, our decision was to approve or not approve the specific resolutions that were due to come before us, and for that, we voted unanimously in favor of these 3 resolutions. Thank you.
So I will now recognize representatives from HHR and to give us a presentation on this item.
Good evening. My name is Chris Price. I'm the co-chair of the HHR Building Committee. Jill McCammon is my co-chair. I apologize, you get the B team. Jack only likes me, he loves Jill. I'm kind of wounded by that, but please bear with me as I recover and try to do this presentation anyway. So Jill is going to run the slide deck. This is the same presentation that we did to the Board of Selectmen and to the Board of Finance. And as a note, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance approved this request for an additional appropriation. What I'll do is briefly summarize what has transpired since we were last before the RTM in December of 2022. I'll go through this presentation and then we'll be ready to take questions from the group. Before I start, let me just very quickly recognize the members of the HHR Building Committee, Jill McCammon, who is also the chair of the Board of Ed, David Martin, who's here this evening, who is our liaison to the Board of Finance, Sarah Newman, who's here this evening, who is our liaison also to the Board of Selectmen, Jameson Riley, Paul Harding, Tom Harris, Patrick Hayes, and David Kerwar. And I also want to recognize our professional team, which has done a tremendous amount of work, ONGAP, which is our construction manager, and KG&D Architects, who is the lead architects on the project, And then from the school district, Dr. Adley, who's here this evening, and Kevin Monrette, who is the Director of Facilities, who's not here, I don't think, but who has been a tremendous, tremendous help to us. Let me get a little bit of a history lesson, take us back to the very beginning of this process. In August of 2021, before I had any involvement in this project, the Board of Selectmen created a building committee to oversee the renovation and construction at the 3 elementary schools and to stand up the building committee. The building committee was formed in February of 2022. What does that charge from the Board of Selectmen mean? The key things, we've been talking, I want to refocus a little bit on the key drivers of this project, because there has been a lot of talk about, well, should we have built new schools, or should we have done more extensive renovations? The key drivers of these projects were, one, eliminating the temporary classrooms. The temporary classrooms typically were supposed to have a useful life of 9 to 10 years. Some of them have been there for over 20 years. To construct or renovate libraries and general learning commons. In 2 of the schools, there'll be brand new libraries. In 1 of the schools, there'll be a renovated library. Right-sizing general and subject matter classrooms so that they all are up to state standards. And then a big part of this project, probably about 70 or 75% of the budget, is upgrading the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. That is things like central air conditioning in all of the schools. It's new roofs on all of the schools, for example. Back in 2016, a study was done by KG&D Architects of all of the elementary schools, and that really led to the decision to renovate these schools rather than build new schools. In the case of Ox Ridge, it led to the decision to build a new school. The 3 schools that we're working on, that we're charged with, were determined to have very, very good base original construction. People like to say they had good bones. They'd been maintained very, very well since the last major renovations. The way they sat on the sites was considered optimal, and obviously a cost analysis between building new and renovating was done. Again, a big part of this was driven by getting rid of the portables, which are way past their useful life and need to be replaced. The renovated schools, when these schools are completed, taking into account those portions that'll be new construction plus those portions that'll be renovated, should have a useful life of between 25 and 30 years. Going back a little bit to what has transpired since we were before you last. The last time we were here in front of you was in December of 2022, where we asked for an increased appropriation because we were asked to expand the scope of our project to do 2 things. One, to put new roofs on all 3 of the schools rather than just repair or patch renovate the roofs, and also to acquire the property that's adjacent to the Holmes Elementary School, what people would call the Curtis property. Since that increased appropriation, a lot of work has gone on. We completed all of our construction drawings, we updated our cost estimates, and we went through a number of our town approvals, in particular the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Architectural Review Board. We then did an initial round of bids on the basis of the construction drawings in the summer of 2023. That process had lower participation than we had hoped. We think that was attributable to the fact that it was the time of year when there were a lot of contractor trades that were very, very busy. They were fully consumed. They didn't really have time to bid. The type of schedule, the type of project that it is, being a renovation as versus a new construction project, and the fact that we were asking for an accelerated schedule. We were asking for a lot of overtime work and weekend work. The bids at that time exceeded our estimates by about 25%. We decided, after a lot of thought and a lot of input from our professional team, to rebid 12 out of the 19 trade packages. 7 of the trade packages we thought were acceptable based on participation, based on the bids that we had gotten, and we asked those trade contractors to hold their bids, and they've agreed to hold their bids until January 31st of this year. We decided then to rebid those 12 of 19 trade packages. We did consider, because obviously we were cognizant of the fact that costs had gone up, we did consider reducing the scope or eliminating some of the alternatives that we had thought or add-ons to the project. We decided against it. The advice we had been getting from our predecessors, like the folks who had done the Ox Ridge project, folks who had done the Tokenique project, and some other large capital projects in town, was to avoid value engineering down the project to meet, but rather to work up to the standards that were set out in the education specs. Our professional team made a very, very concerted effort to increase participation by the bidders, and we got new bids back November of 2023. The good news is we had greater participation. We had, in every case, at least 3 bidders per trade package. We had a slight reduction in overall cost by virtue of the rebid, of about a 2% overall savings over where we were in the summer. I think the good news is it validated the summer bid results. It showed us that they weren't a fluke, if you will. But on reflection, I think the estimates that we used going into the bid process were on the low side. Our construction professionals, our construction managers have recommended that we accepted 12 of the rebid packages so that folks understand the way we bid. It's interesting, we've had some conversations with private sector developers who are amazed at the way the state process works. We are, by law, required to accept the lowest, quote, qualified bid. The bidders all have to submit certificates that they've been qualified by the state. So everybody who bid was qualified. So we are mandated to take the lowest bid. We cannot negotiate. You can't go to the contractor that has, maybe a better reputation in the market and say, gee, if you can drop your price by a few percent, you can have this job. It's also basically open book bidding. So you can't go to sealed bids, for example. So it becomes very non-competitive, if you will. Bottom line, where we are as a result of that summer 23 bid, fall 23 rebid, is that we're going to be asking for an additional appropriation of $19,240,000 over and above the $82,250,000 that this body approved in December of 2022. If approved, we can award all these contracts. As Jack noted, the town will not be directly entering into these contracts. The only contract the town will be entering into is a guaranteed maximum price contract with our construction manager. That has a very, very narrow list of exceptions to the guaranteed maximum price. But then the construction manager, in turn, will be signing up with each of the construction trades to perform this work. The goal would be to be able to award those contracts, as this body knows, assuming our request for the additional appropriations is approved. There's a 10-day rescission waiting period, so we could actually award the contracts on February 1st. Assuming that occurs, the plan is to start construction in the spring of 2024, as soon as the kids are off campus at each of the 3 schools, and the goal would be to have completion of all 3 projects by the time school starts in the fall of 2026. The idea is, and we've gone through this, but just for folks' information, the idea is to do a lot of the heavy site prep, demolition work during the summers. There will be work done during the school year while the kids are in school. Our construction manager has devised a very, very careful and well thought out phasing plan so that the school year is disrupted as little as possible, so that the kids and the faculty and the administration are kept as safe as possible with construction equipment. We've done presentations to the faculty of all the schools and to the PTO of all the schools describing the phasing process. Those folks were satisfied with what was presented. To get into a little bit more detail on the next slide, Jack went into a lot of it, so I'll try to move fairly quickly through this. You know, the why $19 million? Where did the additional $19 million, 19,240, come from? As we note, there were a couple of places where there were some refinements to the scope as a result of our discussions with planning and zoning. For example, we refined and upgraded at additional cost our stormwater management infrastructure for both Hindley and Holmes. We got a lot of comments from neighbors at both of those schools, and stormwater management became an important part of the project. Jack noted unsuitable soils that were detected by virtue of a number of studies that were done, security upgrades that were mandated, new main entrances and corridors at Holmes. There was some additional ceiling replacement work. P&Z also asked us to put screens up on the roofs around the HVAC equipment that was going to be on the roofs. There was also one of the design changes was underneath the places where there's going to be new construction at the schools was to include basement areas, both to put the new mechanical equipment, HVAC equipment, as well as to provide additional storage. There were a couple of alternatives. These are alternatives that we agreed thought made sense to include: adding new acoustical ceilings and lighting in the cafeterias, some additional parking spaces. There's an underground fuel tank not leaking, but we thought prudent to remove in the main parking lot at Holmes. There was an extension of the bus plaza at Hindley, skylights at Royal to provide more natural light. And then the other thing was, the other aspect that accounted for about $2.9 million of increased cost. We're in an inflationary environment. We delayed the start of construction by roughly 11 months, calculating inflation construction escalation at about 4.8% per year. There was also some additional construction management costs, soft cost increases. We are increasing partly because we want this project to go very, very smoothly. All three schools are going to be renovated at the same time. There's going to be a trailer with a project manager on site at each of the schools. That was some additional staffing. And also, just by virtue of the hard costs going up, the construction management fee is a percentage of project cost. So as the hard costs go up, the construction management fee goes up, as does the cost of performance bonds and liability insurance. There were also some soft cost increases. There was an expansion of the furniture buy. There was some increased scope in terms of improving technology that was going to be serving the schools. And as Jack noted, an owner's contingency increased to 5%. That increase in the contingency was based largely on the advice of our professional team. They noted that that is the industry standard in renovation projects like this. Rather than having a fixed dollar amount contingency, we thought it was prudent to incorporate a 5%, a percentage contingency. And part of it, candidly, this is a renovation, right? It's not new construction. We think that there's been a tremendous amount of diligence done by our professional teams around things like, how difficult is it going to be to run new mechanical systems and integrate them into the existing systems. the point about soils, right? The point that, quote, unsuitable soils were found, that's a result of extensive soil engineering projects being done. The engineering that was done around stormwater runoff, because there's going to be more impermeable surface with new roofs and new hardscape. So, we don't think there's going to be a lot of unforeseen, unknown stuff coming up, but it's a renovation, so it may happen, and thus we think the 5% contingency is prudent. And then, there's another $4.4 million in that $19 million, which is harder to quantify. It's not, you can't point to one thing and say, well, it's that dollar amount. It's it's market conditions, for example. It's that the world of trade contractors that do projects like this is not huge. They're busy. There's a lot of work out there. There's a labor shortage. Supply chain problems seem to be resolving themselves, but a lot of stuff is still very, very expensive. And I think, as I noted, just the nature of the bidding process, the fact that it was an open book process, and that when we rebid, a lot of these contractors had seen the summer bids, so they kind of knew what the benchmark was. So that's the meat and potatoes of the presentation. As I noted, it's $19,240,000 and change of an additional appropriation. We believe strongly that the project that's been designed is consistent with the ed specs that were adopted by the Board of Education, and we're happy with the project. We're very happy with our team of professionals, and believe that this is the best we're going to do from a pricing standpoint, and would ask for your approval. But we're also here to take any questions that anybody has.
Questions from the body?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah.
Beth Pope, District 5. When your first slide showed the charge for the HHR committee, and when I'd seen it before, I thought it said with the timetable of for occupancy as early as September 2024 and no later than September 2025.
Right.
Is there a reason that's not on the charge? Did it change?
Honestly, we'd have to get back to you on that. We didn't. We just picked this charge out of what was in our.
I ask because we're talking about a lot of like inflationary effects and,
Right.
and the open bidding system, and the time lapse, I think, appears to me has affected the increasing costs of this project. And I wondered why that was left off, or if it had been changed.
No. The charge hasn't changed. The delay was purposeful, right? The delay of a year. The original plan was to start construction in August of 2023, this past August. It kind of has a different effect depending on the context. On one hand, we think that caused the bids to be higher in the summer than we had anticipated, because starting construction on that timeline was going to accelerate the work schedule, and it was going to require a lot more overtime. And so contractors either opted not to bid because they didn't want to put in the overtime, they didn't want to bring their teams down to Darien on the weekends, or they were going to charge considerably more for it. So we decided to delay the project, and that's also the byproduct of the rebidding process. So now we're looking at a construction start of spring 2024, completion of August of 2026.
One other just question. You only consider bids from state-approved contractors because the idea is that you will get grant money back from the state.
Right.
And there is definitely an analysis, I'm sure, but please confirm that it makes it worthwhile, right? Like, so there's open bidding and there are only a certain amount of contractors that are approved by the state to bid. If you had been able to do open bidding outside of state-approved contractors, perhaps you would have had more competition, less coordination of the bids you receive. But is that part, or was it always, is the rule, do you have to have state-approved contractors?
Well, yeah, because the state has a role broader than just partial reimbursement. They oversee the design. They, for example, set the standard on classroom sizes. So a school project has to be done under state auspices.
I understand
generally.
the specs.
Right, but as a result of that, we have to use state-approved. Let me rephrase the answer. That's kind of a purely theoretical or academic question because we didn't have the option to do private bidding, right? We had no ability to do that. If we had done this like a private sector project, yes, maybe we would have gotten better pricing. We would have been able to negotiate bids, but that just wasn't an option that we had in front of us.
That was my question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions?
Did you want to respond?
This is just the first paragraph of the charge. There is more language underneath it, but this is the first paragraph, and for the purposes of PowerPoint, because we couldn't fit the whole thing.
My point was that's a pretty significant part that was omitted.
It's not omitted, it's just because, it's on the website. It's just for the purposes of this discussion, we're trying to give folks a framework to understand the work of the committee. But you certainly have access.
Yeah. Jack. Thanks, Chris.
This project has been delayed, but I actually think that the delay has made these numbers better than they were before. Because of the extra engineering, the soil testing, the other looks of what we will need to do, the security issues, all these other things that were not in the original plan, but should have been on hindsight. This is a good plan. I have a lot of confidence in the numbers. And so usually delays are not good. And yes, we have some inflationary costs that have added to it. But I think that most of the costs that we're seeing here are increases in the scope, increases in making it a better school, and increases in having better knowledge because we had more time to do some evaluations. And so that's just my opinion of what it is, but I think that yes, we'd all like it to be less, yes, we'd all like the schools to be open, and my kids who are all in their 30s were in those portables, so it's about time to get rid of them.
I agree on that, Jack.
Any other questions that I can answer? Oh, come on.
Careful, Chris.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Nice job. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Now, we're going to, wait, just before I go, I get a little ahead of myself. It's 24-5 first, so we're voting 24-5 first. Okay, all in favor, 24-5. Results of voting on 24-4, 73 in favor, 2 no, 1 abstention, 24-4 passes. Yeah, I'm not, that's, I've just, still got my yeses standing here. Noes, please. Abstentions? Okay. Now, for those district chairs, are you set up to be able to just go to the next one and we can turn them all in at the same time? Yes. Okay. So now we are voting 24-6. All those in favor, please rise. Okay, noes, please. Abstentions? Okay. Ready for the next one, district chairs? Okay, it looks like it. So the next one is 24-7. All those in favor, please rise. Okay. Noes, please. And abstentions. I don't see any. Okay. One abstention. There we go. Okay, so we'll wait till we get everybody down here and get the votes turned in. Okay. I'll note to everybody that we sent out a revised calendar that came out to everyone, trying to make the calendar out at times when we don't have religious holidays, holidays when the town hall isn't open. We think we've got it right this time. All right, next item on the agenda is 24-8, appropriation for a new fire truck for the Norton Fire Department. Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move resolution appropriating $1,126,385 for the purchase of a fire engine and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $1,126,385 to meet said appropriation. Do I have a second? I have Joe. If there's no objections, I will waive the reading of the resolution. This is a purchase of a fire engine. The details of the equipment will be addressed by the RTM Public Health and Safety Committee report. This report will address solely the financial aspects of the transaction. The total appropriation for bondings of this fire engine is $1,126,385 and includes $3,500 of bond issuance costs, netting to the anticipated costs of $1,122,885 for the fire engine itself. Included in that cost is both contingency and the cost of an EPA recommended engine. If the contract is signed by the end of January, another type of engine, which is what the fire department wants, may be installed. If that other engine is installed, that will result in a $55,000 savings. Regarding the cash flow, a payment of $425,000 is due upon the completion of the fire engine block, which should be completed sometime around January of 2025. The remaining $695,000 will be due upon the actual delivery to the Norotan Fire Department, which is, drum roll, 900 days from now. And there's an article that while manufacturing isn't going well, fire engine manufacture is booming. It is anticipated that the initial payment will be made from the town's general fund and that the bonding for the fire engine will not be done for another 2 to 3 years. Thus, it will remain authorized but unissued debt during that time. Any amounts not spent will be rescinded by the Board of Finance upon completion of the project. I want to give kudos, and Brendan Keene, who's the fire chief, is sitting in the back calmly, having put up with the meeting, to the Norotan Fire Department to initiate the purchase of this fire engine now. The existing fire engine was scheduled to be replaced and taken out of service about the time that this new fire engine will be delivered. The town should be very thankful for the foresight of this department. The estimated annual debt service for a 20-year bond is $77,017. The principal and interest will be paid by the general fund. As I mentioned, the total debt after all the other things we've done is $184,445,350. And I want to add something else. If you go to the Board of Finance report of their meeting on January 16th, you'll see all of the debt that's currently outstanding plus what was anticipated, less what's been issued, less what grants and other amounts that we're anticipating to get back, which brings the number down, instead of being 184 million to about 168 million. And that doesn't include the contingencies that we have here that, if not spent, will not be bonded. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of the Public Health and Safety Committee, Mac Patrick.
Thanks, Seth. I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety. Our committee met on January 11th with 8 of 13 members present in a special joint meeting with Finance and Budget, hearing a presentation by Brendan Keene, the Chief of the Norotan Fire Department. The current fire engine is a 2002 Marion rescue pumper called Engine 32. Chief Keene noted the National Fire Prevention Association standard useful life of a fire truck includes its use as a frontline vehicle for 15 years of service, then removed to reserve status and ultimately replaced after 25 years of age. New vehicle construction is currently backlogged 2.5 years. The Darien Fire Replacement Committee considered refurbishment at approximately 1/2 the cost of the new purchase, but the downside includes many retained components would still be 25 years old. The proposed fire engine is designed to conform to the needs of the Darien community, an example being allowing turning in tight areas like driveways. Public Health and Safety members questioned Chief Keene on plans to dispose of Engine 32. Chief Keene noted various options would be explored. Gifting, selling whole to collectors, and selling as scrap are among the options to be considered. Public Health and Safety Committee voted unanimously to approve the appropriation with one abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Other committees? Have anything to say? Okay. Questions from the body? Town officials? Okay. Electors of the town? Seeing none, looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Results of the voting on 24-5, 70 in favor, 3 noes, 2 abstentions. 24-5 passes. Yes, 24-5 is 70, 3 noes, 2 abstentions. We get the noes and the abstentions? Good. Next item on the agenda is 24-9, Board of Assessment Appeals, approval to add new members. They have to be able to add new members from time to time because there's peak demand. It's very cyclical. So, speaking on behalf of the TGS&A Committee, Frank Kemp.
My name is Frank Kemp, District 4, Chair of the RTM TGS&A Committee. I move RTM Resolution 24-9, an ordinance for the temporary appointment of additional members of the Board of Assessment Appeals. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. If there's no objection, I would waive the reading of the resolution. On Monday, January 22nd, TGS&A Committee, with all members present, met to discuss this resolution that had been forwarded by the assessor for the town of Darien. The background on this material, on this matter, is well explained in the executive summary memo of January 16th from Tony Homecki. This memo was included in our package of reference materials for this meeting. As explained in the executive summary, the town-wide revaluation of all taxable and exempt real estate has been completed, and we've all received our notice of the new assessment amount. But as you may know, we have an opportunity to file a request for informational hearing on our assessments until February 20th. It's anticipated that the number of appeals will jump from a non-reevaluation year count of 40 to 50 requests for appointments, up to 200 requests for these reviews. As such, the 3-member Board of Assessment Appeals is requesting that the Board of Selectmen to appoint alternate members of the board. After reviewing this background material, the TGS&A Committee unanimously approved Resolution 24-9 and recommended its approval by the full RTM this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Other committees wish to speak? Okay. Questions from the body? See none. Town officials? Electors of the town? I see none. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Results of the voting on 24-8, 72 in favor, no noes, 3 abstentions. 24-8 passes. No votes, abstentions. Okay. Next item on the agenda is 24-10, Tax Assessor Authority to give more time to receive commercial information without penalty. Speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, we're just keeping Jack busy tonight. Jack Davis.
I have a couple comments before I get started, Anyone who took 10 o'clock at the ending of the meeting, you lost. I would be wearing this, however, it does not stay on with this sweater. This is also, out of all the resolutions we did, probably my most favorite. Working with our tax assessor, Tony Hamicki, was a real joy. I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move 2410, resolution of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien to authorize the tax assessor to grant a waiver of any penalty imposed upon the commercial real estate owner for failure to file an income and expense statement. Do I have a second? I'll take Joe. At this time, I'm actually going to read the resolution. Number one, it's short. And number two, it also explains some of what's going on. Whereas the Town of Darien's commercial real estate owners are required to annually to file an income and expense form with the local assessor on or before June 1st of each year, or be subject to a 10% penalty in their property tax. And whereas the confidential income and expense disclosure document is critical in assisting the assessor in his or her efforts to define and defend the valuation of commercial property for the assessment purposes, and whereas Section 12-63C allows municipalities by ordinance to give its local assessor latitude to impose any fine when the assessor does not meet the deadline, when the taxpayer does not meet the deadline. Now therefore be it resolved, the tax assessor of the Town of Darien may waive such penalty should the owner, within the sole discretion of the assessor, demonstrate good cause as to why such owner was unable to timely submit this information. Section 12-63C addresses municipalities receiving income and expense statements from commercial landlords, as I said, so local tax assessors can establish the assessment value of real property for tax purposes. The income and expense statement, which is certified by the landlord, must be received no later than June 1st. The income and expense statement is critical for assessing the value as well as defending that such valuation. The section further states that the tax assessor must provide the income and expense form to the commercial property holder, and they must receive it no later than April 15th, 45 days prior to the deadline. If the landlord does not meet the June 1st date, a penalty of 10% will be assessed. That's a penalty that increases the landlord's taxes by 10%. A rather steep penalty. If a penalty is assessed, notification must be made by the tax assessor to the taxpayer no later than August 15th annually. To be honest, when I first looked at this request to waive penalties, the accountant in me was concerned about internal control. How do we ensure that penalties are not being arbitrarily raised? But upon further investigation, this is not the point. The town has been sending income and expense statements to commercial landlords over the years, and with relatively good results. However, no penalties have ever been assessed. Why, you may ask? That's what the committee did. We asked that question. And the reason is simple. Currently, either all landlords that are late in providing information to the tax assessor must be charged the penalty, or none of them can be charged. It's the legal concept of goose gander. What you do for one, you need to do for all. Therefore, without having the authority to waive, the town has not assessed any penalties. This resolution authorizing our tax assessor at their sole discretion to waive such penalties provides the tax assessor with a tool to work with landlords. It eliminates the goose-gander legal dilemma and allows the assessment of penalties where appropriate versus whacking everyone, even if there was a reasonable cause for the delay. There is a little caveat. All filings, even if there's a waiver, need to be received no later than 4 months from the June 1st date to avoid the penalty. The RTM F&B Committee voted unanimously to approve this resolution and strongly recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Any other committees wish to speak on this? Town officials? Questions from the body? No. Electors of the town? I see none. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Results on voting on 24-9, 74 in favor, 0 noes, 1 abstention. 24-9 passes. Please don't leave until we get the tally on this last item, 2410.
I heard you had a paddle match yesterday.
Okay. No votes? Folks, if there were any no votes, we couldn't see them. Abstentions, please. Please wait. Please do not leave until we get the tally done. Folks, the meeting is not adjourned yet. I have to wait till a tally. I have to announce the results of the vote. Then I can take a motion to adjourn. We gotta tally the vote on the last item, and I have to announce it legally. Yes, results of 24-10, 74 in favor, no votes, 1 abstention, 24-10 passes. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, so many. I'll take Jan Raymond. Second from Jenny. All in favor, please rise.
I hate this thing.